And this is...
Well, you do know that court ruling the Federal Reserve had until yesterday. That was a deadline. And obviously,
to appeal.
They filed an appeal. A stay was granted. And so, yeah, the clock's...
They get 60 days, and then they'll lose, and then they'll appeal to the Supreme Court.
Well,
But I hate to be a wet blanket here, Bob, but even if it gets through the House, you know and I know it'll never make it to the Senate.
Well, I disagree. I think it will make it through.
Because these are the guys that caused. These are the very people that caused the problem in the first place. Did you watch 60 Minutes on Sunday night?
No, I don't.
I was absolutely amazed because they ID'd who caused the problem.
60 Minutes.
The point is this: if we don't get 1207, and we don't clean house next November or the November after this one, it's in the streets.
We don't have till November, brother.
Well, and
it may collapse before then, and that obviate everything. But I don't know that it's going to collapse before then. They get a pretty good handle on this thing, and they just keep on pumping out money that you don't know about.
I don't know. Today, I think the first crack in the dike started, and it wasn't for any other reason. And well, I'm speculating here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bob.
You're wrong.
Today was more to do about, there's been the story about China defaulting on its
derivatives.
On its derivatives. In other words, what China did is it turned around to Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and the rest of them on Wall Street and said, listen, you sold us this crap, we ain't paying.
And that's true. They ain't paying. And that's going to make the cheese more binding. And they're selling between $25 and $100 billion a month worth of U.S. dollar-denominated assets, most of which are treasuries.
Yeah, and that's why financials went into a tailspin today.
That's right, and they're only a year and a half before they're naked of treasuries, U.S. treasuries. They've already got rid of their agencies, and so then they'll be out of it, and they will not accept dollars after that.
I mean, look what happened. You had the dollar up 58 basis points and gold up $5.
Yeah, well, the dollar being up 58 basis points was the result of the Federal Reserve selling the 5 major currencies which they contracted for in exchange for dollars, the dollars of which they made up out of thin air. And what the other side is doing, the 5 major central banks, they are going into the Treasury auctions, and they're buying U.S. Treasuries with the money. So essentially, we know that at a minimum that they have spent $500 billion monetizing and rigging both the dollar as well as the Treasury auctions.
Hold on a second, gentlemen. We've got to take this break. 800-313-9443, and Skype is also open to your questions only. John.Statmiller. We'll be right back. The one good thing about being a wet blanket in the desert southwest is you're not wet for long. Max Kaiser from a couple of days ago on Ben Bernanke getting voted in and renominated by yours truly, Barry Sartoro, a.k.a. President Obama.
You're on the edge with me, Max Kaiser. Can anybody hear me out there? Help! Help! I'm part of an economy that's been held hostage by psychopaths. In America, they're going to renominate that financial terrorist, Ben Bernanke, for another term of 4 years. What lunacy. What absolute psychosis. If you look at the Financial Times, it says it all. U.S. says the debt outlook is worsening. Unemployment is going to go north of 10%. Of course, that's the cooked numbers presented by the government. The real number is closer to 16%. The economy is going to shrink by 2.8%, so the economy is continuing its contraction, and they nominate the psychopath who was responsible for this catastrophe. You know, because basically the analogy of being held hostage is a good one, and I would invite any country out there who wants to adopt me to please send me an email, because I'm trying desperately to get out of that nut house over there. Here's another example of the lunatics running the asylum. Joe Lieberman, who's basically a politician for hire. You throw him enough bucks and he'll do anything you want. He's like a trained monkey or a dancing chicken out there in Connecticut. He says that he doesn't want to worry about the uninsured in America, which is like saying he doesn't want to worry about Americans. Because if you don't have health insurance, basically any kind of health problem at all, you immediately go into bankruptcy, pretty much is what goes on over there. And there's almost 50 million people, 310, 20 million without insurance. So Joe Lieberman says, I don't care about Americans. I don't care about their lives. We have to get over this recession first. But the recession is being engineered by Bernanke. Do you see what I'm saying? There's no connection. They're holding the economy hostage, and the people in America are being absolutely abused.
I can't add anything to that. Can you guys?
Well, I ran it in the last issue. Actually, there were three links, and I think he really covers it very well. In fact, he makes me look like real moderate.
Well, he says it the way it is. In your newsletter, you said after the announcement that the president had renominated Ben Bernanke as chairman of the Fed Reserve, we were led to believe he saved us from a fate worse than death. Bernanke, I'm quoting Bob Chapman, Bernanke created enough money and credit to temporarily overcome the deflationary undertow in the economy. Ben then created the problem along with Sir Alan Greenspan, and now he wants us to believe he's going to save us by solving the problem. This is the same Ben that gave Greenspan academic cover. He had the temerity to blame the credit crisis on foreigners who created a savings glut, particularly Asians. He said that the suppressed bond yields, that was part of that. That was probably true, but he conveniently forgets to mention that the Fed created all those dollars in the first place, and we're responsible for lower interest rates. Ben believes any slowdown or shock to the system can be easily handled by injecting more money and credit into the system. And you also said here, Ben is the man who is going to lead us into the federal deficit of 100% of GDP over the next decade, as deficits swell to more than $1 trillion a year. That's every year, folks. Count them. Every year, $1 trillion deficit. No wonder Max Kaiser says, "Get me the heck out of here." It's gone past lunacy. Now, I wanted to ask you, Bob. We've got the G20 coming up at the end of the month, I do believe, or the 20th or something like that, in Philadelphia. I've seen some posturing here. The news stories are hitting that, the banks are paying back a few billion here and a few billion there. Is that to ease the concerns of the great minds that are going to be meeting at that G20?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, it's in anticipation. And you got to remember, too, with those who would have already paid the money back, like Goldman Sachs, they used the money to make buku money. They were 50 times leveraged, maybe more, with that money. Here they were given the money for solvency's sake, and they're out gambling. They made a pile of money that showed up in their earnings. And, here's the money back, and we'll pay you a little stipend for it, as they made billions. And so the government said on the money that they lent out that they got back again, they made $4 or $5 billion. Well, if you split it up among a bunch of them, I don't know how many there were, maybe 10, let's say. That's about $500 million each, and they all made probably $5 to $10 billion each. So that's where your money went, for them to gamble.
Now,
the whole thing is ludicrous. It's crazy.
Now, also, and you alluded to it, you mentioned Wall Street. If we get to peek into the Fed's books and what they've been doing and how they've been handling things, you mentioned pumping money into Wall Street. Is that going to reveal the plunge protection team and how much they have rigged the American markets?
Absolutely. It's all going to come out, and that's why the Bloomberg suit was excellent. But what we've got sitting in Congress is even better.
All right.
If we can make it work. And so everybody out there, write to the Senate and tell them you want it done, and write to the Nancy Pelosi and say leave the bill alone, leave it the way it is.
We'll be right back, folks. 800-313-9443.